What's up? Yo.
Yo, we're live. It's the Zocalo. We're back.
We're
Thank
back.
goodness. Oh,
Okay.
man, it feels so good. Feels so freaking good. You know what? I don't say this very much these days, but today has been a really good day for me. I don't know. I woke up on the quote unquote right side of the bed. I've got good energy. I'm just feeling good vibes. Life is good right now. And man, while it lasts, I am so here for it. So I'm glad we're doing a show to spread the joy.
I'm glad that you're having a good day. I had a good day
thanks.
too. I had a pretty good day.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Positive energy. We need it more than ever.
Oh wow, look, we got Super Dave in the chat. We have BC, we have Mountains of Elysium already here. Waiting to pounce on our every word.
All right. Let's make them hang on every little word, huh? I love it. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. In case you are new here, this is the Zocalo. It's your one-stop shop for everything related to Babylon 5. And guess what? We're actually doing a Babylon 5 topic. Last time we were here, we had to just kind of catch up. Today, we're going to do a real show.
We are going to do a real show. And Shar and I have been trying to figure out some of the content that we're going to bring to you for the next couple weeks. And one of the things that I threw out to her was that, for a while, I don't know if anyone in our chat was there when we were on Facebook, but we did start on Facebook.
Back in the day, 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, around this time, like in the late fall, like late September, early October, we started.
Yeah.
And we used a different system that wasn't really all that friendly with basically our internet connection. So we kind of had some technical challenges, and we never really got kind of the full emphasis of our shows out into the ether that is the interwebs, especially here on YouTube.
Right, because we were just on Facebook Live. So if you weren't on Facebook, which I'm not, I was only on Facebook at that time just for the Zocalo. Yeah, if you weren't on that platform, you didn't know who we were. You never saw the show. And we realized, Norm, that we covered some really good topics in those old shows, which are unfortunately no longer accessible. So guess what? Now we get to revisit them and put them out on YouTube for posterity and for our audience, which, I mean, it has grown and we have a whole bunch of new people here. You guys haven't visited these topics with us. So now's our chance to all put in some input, talk about it. Let's do this.
So for us, we'll have a hearty Valtu.
Valtu. Are you drinking tea?
I am, and here's why. Because I don't know if I told you this, but I started a new cleansing regimen.
Oh, you're on a quote-unquote diet?
I'm on a quote-unquote diet, and my stomach's not in the best shape right now because it's starting to adjust to not having solid foods and heavy carbs and things of that nature. So I didn't think that alcohol right now would be like the best choice for me. So I'm drinking herbal tea.
Okay.
And actually, I'm drinking, that's not true. I'm drinking Earl Grey tea. And to quote a very famous line from one Elam Garrick, he's like, that Earl Grey, he goes, when I get a chance, I'm going to have some words with him. He was not a fan of Earl Grey, I guess.
Okay. You know what? I am not the biggest fan of tea in general, and I tried Earl Grey. I really wanted to like it because of JLP, but you know what? It wasn't for me. Most teas aren't. I'm a coffee girl. I'm Captain Janeway through and through.
There you go. I don't really care for tea. John and I were talking about this on one of the mission logs on our Patreon channel. And he said that, what do you do when you want really strong tea? I'm like, if I want really strong tea, I'll make coffee.
That is the correct answer.
So before I get into the show, let's get into some of the comments here. So, okay, Earl, yes, dude, swords.
Swords.
So, Shar, I bought that green screen. That green screen deal where you can make that pop-up green screen and stick it behind your chair.
Oh, behind the chair.
Yeah, and I haven't done it yet. And every single time that I've been on a recording that people have been able to see, on my messages, my meetings for work on Teams or things of that nature, they'll say, dude, I had no idea that you were that close to swords. That's
dude, really?
That's a 10th of my collection. Most of that stuff, most of my really, really heavy gear is already packed up in the garage.
Oh, wow, already?
Yeah.
Yeah, moving, it's a process, and it's coming for you.
Yeah, it's coming sooner than I thought. So just to get everyone up to speed, and just to make sure that I have an excuse if any broadcast interruptions. But many of you know that Carol and I have been planning a move to Florida, and as of today, we signed on an agreement for the sale of the house.
Ta-da! First hurdle. Well, for one of the first big hurdles. Now you get to do all the inspections and make sure everything checks out. And then when you sign the papers, it's official. But congratulations.
Thank you. It's exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. But
totally.
I said this to my realtor. She was talking about all these details and are you nervous and are you anxious? And I actually quoted Delenn for her. I said, the universe will provide and faith manages. So.
Yeah.
You have to kind of like leave it up to that, because trying to try and fit everything into a plan usually tends for more anxiety and more chaos.
Oh yeah, especially with a process like this where there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of things that are not in your control, and there's always going to be some sort of drama, no matter how much you try to cover all of your bases. That's just the way it works. But at the 11th hour, things usually tend to work out.
I think so, and like I said, I'm gonna focus on what I can. What I can't is up to the universe. Maybe or not, it'll work well with me. We'll see. I'll address that as the time comes. Slice of Sci-Fi is in here with us.
Hello, Summer.
And Patrick is with us. So
yes, and Earl. Earl's here, and Earl is also in the midst of a move. And I agree, it is painful. It's a pain in the ass, but sometimes you just got to.
Yeah, it's just, and like I don't really have the decision was already kind of made for the move, so we're planning our best to tackle one problem at a time. First hurdle has already been challenged, met, and now the rest of it takes care of itself. So I have 45 days based on the agreement of the escrow, and there we go. We're off to the races.
Yeah, off you go. Yep. I hope everything continues to go smoothly. And I mean, this was pretty quick for you. I mean, you put the house on the market, earlier this week? Wasn't that long.
Wednesday.
Dang.
It listed Wednesday. We had 2 showings on Thursday. The second showing ended up being the buyer for the house.
Wow. Amazing. That's just the way it works out. Sometimes when you have somebody who's been looking around for a little while and is motivated, they know when they see it, they want it, and they're going to do what they need to do to get it. That's what we did when we bought our place. That's what happened when my husband and I sold our place in Fargo a few years ago. The first person who looked at our house, that was the offer we took. But things were super competitive when we left there. Like the housing market, there was not a whole lot of single family housing, and it was a decent house. And there just wasn't much in that price range. We had 4 offers, and my phone was just ringing off the hook for showings the day that we put it on the market, and I could not accommodate everybody. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough room.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Yeah. I know. It's nuts.
Yeah. It's nuts. A circus.
It really sure is.
Even in the age of COVID, a lot of people, I don't know if some markets have gone down or whatnot, but certainly not in Southern California. Believe it or not, prices are as high as ever.
Oh, no. Like actually housing inventory is at a premium right now. Yeah. So we were lucky, unfortunately, based on silver lining, it's an unfortunate circumstance still, but at the same time though, it did work out in a certain favor. So yeah. I can't complain about that. I'll take the wins where we get them, which are kind of few and far between nowadays.
Totally.
Yes. Also dropped off my ballot to vote. Do the adult
thing. Me too.
Yeah.
I did that earlier this last week on a Tuesday, no less. We watched the election night episode of The West Wing, and then my husband and I both filled out our ballots.
So adulting 101.
Adulting, yeah.
This weekend.
And I figured there's plenty of time for it to get through the mail. It was already received, validated, counted. We're good.
It's too bad they couldn't have done that, like say in the Babylon 5 universe, because Ivanova would have straight up dropped her ballot box in for Marie Crane. I think she still voted for Marie Crane, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because she didn't like the multiple chin thing going on.
That's right. That to her was not a good sign.
Right. Well, shall we get to the topic at hand for today? Because we got a good one.
We shall. So
yeah, I love what you put here. It's 2 for the price of 1.
Hey, you got to have fun with this, right? You got to have fun with this.
Yeah, that was very good.
In Minbari, Za means the one, the one who is, the one who was, and the one who will be. And that we're actually taking a look at one of our first topics that we talked about when we started formulating the show. And that is, let's take a look at our two leading men, the two characters that essentially anchored the show. And that would be Michael O'Hare's Jeffrey Sinclair and Bruce Boxleitner as Captain John J. Sheridan. The differences between the two and kind of the behind the scenes of the dynamic that happened now that after Michael O'Hare's passing, J. Michael Straczynski, in his brilliance in keeping a personal promise, was able to illuminate everybody as to why Michael O'Hare had to leave the show.
Yes, something that we did not know until he did let that secret out. And do you remember when you first heard that news? I mean, I remember I was absolutely floored.
When I heard the Straczynski news about Michael O'Hare?
About what happened with Michael O'Hare. Yeah, why he had to leave the show, what happened in the interim up to his passing, all of it.
So I think the first time I heard the specifics of that news was when I was watching my DVD of the Babylon 5 Phoenix Comic Con for the 20th anniversary. Mm-hmm. I think that's when he said he was able to fulfill his promise and talk about, after Michael O'Hare's passing, why he had to leave the show, and the stipulation that I will promise and keep this promise to never reveal your secret until the day you die.
That's right.
Right? And that's so Joe, right? That's so Joe.
It is. Yeah, that ties in with a thing that very recently came out that we were discussing on Discord. Was JMS has been acting as the executor to the Ellison estate, which, I mean, that's no small feat. He's devoting a lot of time to that. And you could only trust somebody like Joe with that kind of responsibility. Yeah. But that's the kind of person Joe is. He's fiercely loyal. He's a man of his word. And boy, if he's in your corner, man, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and I don't think that, I don't think he doesn't take that that personal responsibility lightly. But I also think that that's a part of him that kind of translates and transcends the written page into the screen and into his characters, especially when it comes down to the loyalties between how Sinclair and Sheridan addressed their crew and the people that were part of their lives. And they did it differently, but you saw the two different sides of I would say, kind of like the monk-like Sinclair and the warrior-like Sheridan. Yeah.
Well, how about that? Why don't we start examining these folks? Shall we begin with the one who was?
Absolutely. He was the one who was, and he kicked off the series. And actually, before we get into that, I wanted to ask you, when you saw, because I know that you started Babylon 5 in late season 4 and then wholesale early in season 5, right?
Not quite. You're very close. I started watching, like, when TNT started airing Babylon 5, they were debuting season 5 as new content, and then they were rerunning seasons 1 through 4 alongside, like 5 days a week. So even though I started watching season 5 episodes, I was catching up.
Oh, that's right. You started with season 5 and then went back to go to season 1.
Yes. So, I mean, I hadn't completely put together exactly how John Sheridan was in the picture at that point, watching season 5. And so essentially I'm trying to Sinclair season 1, here we go. I was in that mindset a lot. Right.
How much of a tonal shift was it for you going backwards and forwards? Because I've only really known the progression of the series since The Gathering, seeing Michael O'Hare and knowing Michael O'Hare's work prior to Babylon 5, because he was always in these kind of, I wouldn't say like Hallmark type movies, but he was always, in these not leading man roles, but always a very good role, like a supporting role. He's a good method actor. But when I saw him on Babylon 5, I'm like, this is his type of physicality and presence as commander, not captain, but commander, was something that was totally different than any type of science fiction show lead of the time, meaning Star Trek.
Yes. So really, it was a total shift for me, because I was expecting this commander to be more of the Captain Kirk, I'm going to get into a bare knuckles fist fight with anybody who crosses paths with me in the wrong way. And really, that's much more Sheridan. And Sinclair is much more reserved, collected. He really is a Minbari, not born of Minbari, right? He talks like a Minbari. That didn't make sense to me for the longest time. I had to really go back to figure that part of it out. Right. And so really, when I was watching Michael O'Hare for that first time, I thought, man, this guy's really not putting that much into his performance. This is really wooden acting. I'm not getting much from this guy. I'm not really sure how he's landed this role. I know that's harsh criticism, but as that first timer brain was trying to absorb what was going on, I was appreciating things like the energy of Ivanova and Franklin and his convictions. Whereas then I kind of felt like Sinclair was the vehicle for all these bigger players to move back and forth. He was just that device that moved between these other more interesting, frankly, characters. It wasn't until I went back and watched over and over what Michael O'Hare was really doing with this character and the characterization of this guy, what he had been through as opposed to Sheridan. Very different stories.
Right.
So that's where I was at.
And that's where we come to like one of the first points we wanted to make about his character is that, his overall demeanor we have here as stoic, calculating, and patient. I would also like to add empathetic in there. He was very empathetic.
Very compassionate.
Very compassionate.
And I would say he's also very good at reading between the lines because nobody could find loopholes in legislation the way Sinclair could. Exactly.
And I think that during the course of the first season, where I know a lot of people, even fans of the series, would say that it's the weakest of the 5 seasons, I would like to submit that if you really look at some of the highest points in that season are some of his best performances with characters. Let's take my favorite, or one of my favorite episodes, if not my favorite episode of all time in Babylon 5, and that's Believers.
Yes.
Believers, when he was talking to Sean, when Sean was, in his medical bed, and he was the only one that asked him prior to the big question, Sean, what is it that you want? What do you want for your life?
He was the one guy, and it wasn't Morden, thank God.
Right. It was just him trying to understand and trying to put himself in the situation of this very terrified young boy whose fate is being decided on by everybody else but himself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that was it was good thinking as the captain to just reach out and talk to him as a fellow being rather than kind of like just this object that's being thrown around like a football, right? In terms of ideologies, and just relate. And hey, how you doing? What do you want of this situation? Because nobody else had asked.
Well, I think that goes kind of like hand in hand with, O'Hare as an actor, and making kind of like these conscious choices to make Jeffrey Sinclair a lot more, I guess, even keeled. Because you're right, he's surrounded by so many strong personalities like Garibaldi, Franklin, Ivanova, right? Londo, Jakar. They're all explosive personalities. But the one character that he probably had the most in common with from a demeanor standpoint was Delenn. And I think that it's because they were, obviously Joe knew what was going on. We didn't know what was going on, but it's because of his future as Valen that will come later, where what will, like Mountains of Elysium said, Sinclair was the perfect Minbari. He was deeply spiritual, helping Jakar fulfill the days of Jaquan.
Yes,
he was a powerful warrior, beating Narun, and help the workers and by any means necessary. So
yes, one of my favorite Sinclair episodes, by the way.
Exactly. And he uses, it's interesting that he uses force in almost in both a physical and spiritual nature and in martial arts, it's a way of using force against your opponent to expose your opponent's weaknesses. Like in By Any Means Necessary, he did. Everyone was coming at him in one angle, but he was like, no, there's a different way of looking at it, a way that people wouldn't suspect it.
Exactly. He was really good at assessing that, right? Where if he doesn't like this situation or this option, well, we're going to make another. There's got to be something there. And he always found it. I really appreciated that. With more and more viewings, it just shows what a good diplomat he was, what a good negotiator he was, and just how he had that creative out of the box thinking. You know, you don't have to pick the lesser of two evils. No, find another way, find something that you can live with. And I think ultimately that is what Sinclair was doing.
Now, in terms of his command style, we said that Sinclair was the wise old war horse. He's seen battle and knew his enemies. He overcame conflict by outmaneuvering the enemy. And that goes back to something that he said when he was talking about lessons he's learned from his father, or on the Battle of the Line, where he said that make your enemy angry. That's when you see the real person.
Right, because then you're getting that primal, really just raw emotion.
You get you get the truth of the situation. You get their real, unfiltered, unedited truth about their response. You know, and I think that's why he was really good at playing the more of the I wouldn't say laid back. He was very much engaged in what he was doing, but more of the kind of like even keeled observer.
Yes, he was very observant, and that helped command his actions.
So he also said that, you know, he is from an old military family going all the way back to the Battle of Britain. I like that Joe focused on that. He's, you know, his family is career military. But at the same time, though, I think that also informed him that wars aren't the best way of establishing relationships, you know, with now other races, especially races that have the ability to wipe out your entire species, like the Minbari.
Totally. Yes.
And we actually did write this down in our notes. His most famous quote, at least from what we believe is his most famous quote: the best way to understand someone is to fight him, make him angry. That's when you see the real person.
There it is.
Now, I mean, like, in contrast with Sheridan, I don't see Sheridan saying that line, because that's not the way that he kind of unveils his tactics. I think Sheridan is
Sheridan,
I
think Sheridan likes to disarm. Sheridan's going to have his angry moments, but not at the person he's trying to direct it to most of the time, if that makes any sense. I mean, he does have his moments where he does have his outbursts, but no, he's got to have that alone time. He's got to have that quiet time. Right. And or maybe he'll talk it out with Delenn, whichever situation calls for what, and then go for it. Yeah.
So before we talk a little bit more about Sinclair, I'd like to get into some of the comments here, because there are a lot, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, good stuff. Super Dave mentions that he was watching B5 with season 5 first, just as I had. And so he experienced Sheridan first. Now, I would love to know, Super Dave, when I got to the end of season 1, and I'd kind of gotten used to Sinclair and his demeanor, and realizing, I think at that point, and granted, I was 17, okay? So I was very young and didn't know crap. I started to realize, you know, it's actually a very good thing to have this kind of cool, calm, collected person running the show, because he is that anchor, right, for all these other bigger personalities taking action on his behalf. So then the transition goes to Sheridan, where he is more of an action hero. He was, he killed the Black Star, what have you. He's, what do they call him?
Sheridan Star Killer. Star
Killer, thank you. Star Killer. And I'm sorry, but Boxleitner does have a more lively performance. He's not afraid to smile every now and then again. And so honestly, I welcomed the transition, even though I did miss Sinclair. My husband, on the other hand, the first time he watched Babylon 5, was devastated at the news of Sinclair's departure. Now, in the comments, who mentioned it? Earl, about Tron. I hadn't seen Tron back then. I knew that Bruce Boxleitner was in it, but I knew Scarecrow and Mrs. King better than I knew Tron at that time. So that did not affect my situation whatsoever.
Well, I mean, Tron, you know, for the age group, for the age that it was marketed to, much like myself, you know, young science fiction nerdy boy, you know, he was a hero, you know. So, and you know, he his rounds, you know, he's been on TV again, like Scarecrow and Mrs. King, you know, that was his big, like, you know, and I think even before Babylon 5, that was his longest running television career. But he always played kind of like the action guy, the good looking action guy with a megawatt smile, you know, and just hunky good look.
It's true. Yeah. Just kind of like that good old boy hero, if you will.
Right. And that's probably where like the biggest contrast was, at least for me, was just the difference of their physicality, because Sheridan didn't start off as the action hero. You know, he actually kind of transitioned in a way where he was a little bit more observational and a little bit more methodical. You know, he wanted to understand what was going on with Trigati, with Kalain, with, you know, not opening fire on them, because he was trying to understand what he would be doing on his very first day of office. Would he actually be starting the war with the Minbari all over again, as if the Battle of the Line was just on a huge 10-year pause?
Right. The last thing that he wants to do is start up another war with the Minbari, because both of our heroes here had experience in the Earth Minbari War. Very different experiences, but they're both trying to figure out very different things. Sinclair trying to figure out the hole in his mind. Sheridan trying to figure out, do I belong here? What is my role here? How do I fit in? How do I make this work? I enjoyed that the transition was not a smooth one at all for Sheridan.
No, and it wasn't a smooth one at all for the fans either, because, you know, kind of like wrapping up our little discussion here on Michael O'Hare, at the end of the first season, it was announced that O'Hare would leave the series as a cast regular to be replaced by Bruce Boxleitner as Captain John Sheridan. Straczynski's official announcement gave no reason for the abrupt change, but emphasized that it was a, quote, mutual, amicable, and friendly separation, and that we will be handling this in such a way that down the road, Sinclair could potentially return to the story, as we saw in War Without Ends Part 1 and 2, when he...
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. I'm so glad that happened, bringing it all full circle and giving Michael O'Hare that last chance to make his character complete. And
we know that now, after the fact, understanding that Michael O'Hare was struggling, you know, with, you know, his mental disorder, that every day for him on set was a struggle, and that Joe, again, being just probably one of the greatest ever of everything.
Oh, totally.
You know,
no question.
You know, understood that he can't put somebody through that. He can't put somebody through that just for the sake of upholding, you know, network contracts or production contracts. He cared for the man and cared for his mental well-being. And just like he did for a lot of other characters, wrote the trapdoor that he needed to write because he's smart. Right, so smart that way. And then we, you know, abruptly were introduced to John Sheridan. And I think that the only thing that was really tough about that was, as with all science fiction shows, it's hard to lose a character. It's even harder to lose a lead character, the lead character.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, that just doesn't happen most of the time. And if it does, it usually means that something on the show, like there's signs of trouble. Something is dysfunctional. And that's a terrible situation for Joe to be in, right? Because he can't say the real reason why, because that would destroy Michael O'Hare's career. He made a promise. He's not about to break it. And yet he has this show to run. What do you do? You just have to cross your fingers and hope for the best. And that is saying a lot when this show was always, you know, on shaky ground the entire time of its whole run.
I wanted to clear up something for Super Dave, because he said in the comments, I had read something online years ago that TNT or WB had wanted him gone, which may have been a rumor. No, they may have said something along that line, but the truth of the matter is, and one of our notes here to close our conversation on Michael O'Hare, in May 2013, 19 years after the departure and nearly 8 months after O'Hare's death, Straczynski publicly discussed the decision at a 20th anniversary of Babylon 5 reunion at Phoenix Comic-Con, as I mentioned earlier. During the filming of season 1, O'Hare was increasingly affected by paranoia and delusions brought on by mental illness, making the demands of the series television increasingly difficult to manage. O'Hare accepted Straczynski's pledge to maintain the secret until after O'Hare passed away, and to share the story of his struggle afterward. So that's the truth. That's the flat truth of why Michael O'Hare had to leave.
Yep. Yeah, it breaks my heart just to know what Michael O'Hare had to have been going through. Schizophrenia is no freaking joke. It's got to be one of the most difficult mental illnesses to navigate, because you're hallucinating, you do not know what's real. There are medications out there. A lot of them have nasty side effects, sometimes worse than just the symptoms themselves that they're trying to treat. It's a lot of times the prognosis is not great unless you luck out and find a medication that really does work for you. Then the trick is just to stay on it. But that also can be a challenge. Sometimes when you're into delusions, feeling a sense of normalcy that's what feels weird, if that makes any sense. And so you go off the medication and into chaos, you're back.
And, you know, when people watch the season 1 of Babylon 5, knowing this, especially the fans, you'll get, I think, a better appreciation of how good his performance really is, knowing that he is fighting and struggling through this mental disorder, but still performing and delivering the quality of product that he is as an actor.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That for real, it upped my appreciation so much learning about what he was going through. And I tried the last couple of times I've watched the show to really see, like, did any of that come through? Maybe it did in one way, but it worked in favor of the character. And a lot of times it was in when Sinclair has been through the ringer and he just looks tired. Mm-hmm. That's probably Michael O'Hare just putting in long hours, doing his very best to try and get through. But to have kind of just this haggard look on the character made sense. And it's unfortunate that he was going through it, but it's not like you're seeing him in I don't know, it's not like any other thing affected his performance. He gave it his all.
Yeah.
So if that was the one thing that leaked through, wow.
And they used it, you know, they probably just say, embrace it, you know, let it go. You know, we can use this, we can add it to the character and so on. I mean,
it worked in his favor, if you ask me, which is kind of a weird thing to say. And yet here we are.
Well, I mean, a lot of actors, you know, they kind of, especially in their best performances, they always embrace kind of like the darkest parts about them because it's true. It's true. And it's something that people have not seen because they're afraid to expose that part of themselves, especially nowadays, since everyone can find a way to find some truth of that matter in social media and mine that for its inevitable social media conclusions. But, you know, the misfortune that it was, you know, and it was devastating to a lot of fans. We did get John Sheridan out of this. We did get Bruce Boxleitner out of it. And, you know, for the next 4 seasons, plus, you know, a couple of appearances in the, you know, in the made-for-TV movies and in the Lost Tales, pretty much the history of Babylon 5 in earnest, not in total, but in earnest, was written on the shoulders of John Sheridan.
Absolutely. So when you get to the point where you are watching the John Sheridan years, it's as if he had always been here, if I may steal a phrase.
You may.
Just and granted, he wasn't. The original plan that wasn't it. But right. JMS made it work to the point where, man, I mean, it's hard to imagine things like seasons 2 through 4 with anybody else.
Yeah. Especially season 4, because that, I think, is some of Bruce Boxleitner's best work, especially intersections in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all the time about, well, what if Michael O'Hare had been in good health and had been able to stay on the show? What would have been different? I think a lot would have been different. Some things might have worked better. Other things might have not worked as well. I really think, I mean, life happens. Things happen for a weird reason sometimes. I have a feeling that just Bruce Boxleitner came on at the right time to take on this role, to do these things the way he needed to do them. I mean, that sounds glib, but no, I think it's true.
Well, looking at Sheridan as the way that we looked at Sinclair, you know, his overall demeanor, his overall kind of the way that he carried himself was based on honor, duty, and loyalty. He was a soldier, like through and through at the beginning, you know, he was the toe of the line, kind of like the way that Lockley described herself, like, yes, sir, no, sir, nothing in between.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of the way that Sheridan was. Then he seasoned, since obviously the Battle of the Line seasoned him as a soldier because he lost so many friends. He lost his captain, basically the destruction of his first command, you know, when he was on the Lexington. I believe it was the Lexington. I could be mistaken about that, but it wasn't it was the Agamemnon. Sorry. He was still on the Agamemnon. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was Lefcourt that was on the Lexington. He saw a lot of the horrors of war, but as a soldier, though, and maybe not necessarily as the same type of like a Jesuit-minded philosopher that Sinclair was, you know, Sheridan was a little bit more. He's a little bit more prone to action. Let's just say.
That's a good way to put it. You know what I also liked is at the start of season 2, and this harkens to a comment Earl just made about how like Garibaldi meets Sheridan and he's immediately doesn't trust him because he doesn't know him. He trusted Sinclair implicitly. Now he doesn't have that trust out of his captain. That is no bueno, which kind of instilled that first time in me watching the series of, well, do I trust this guy? Like, why is he really here? You know, you're questioning motives all the time on Babylon 5. So is he a good guy or isn't he? It seems like some people are quick to embrace him like Ivanova, and I want to trust Ivanova, right? That's what I've been told to do. But is she actually wrong, or does Garibaldi have a point? And so, you know, that created an interesting challenge, especially seeing him try to make his way as how he wanted to command the station.
Well, the neat thing about his introduction there, and you know, basically the two most senior officers kind of studying him for who he is and why he's there. Ivanova did serve with him at one point in time.
That's right. That's why she trusts him.
So that's why she trusts him. Garibaldi doesn't know this guy from, you know, the next Minbari that walked through the door. So he was just like, you got to prove. You got to prove to me that you've earned, not, it goes, I don't care if you've earned this commission. That's not my call. You got to earn my trust. You got to know that, you know, especially since I just got shot in the back. I thought I could trust the one man that I should have been able to trust. And now you come in. I mean, when Garibaldi comes out of his coma, he's like, the lens in a cocoon. You know, I got shot in the back. Sinclair's off.
President's dead.
President's dead. Like that's one heck of a coma, right?
For real. Yeah. Basically, the whole world turned upside down while he was unconscious, and he can't recognize anything anymore. Nothing is the same.
When you think about it, like their 2258 literally was our 2020 right now.
Boy,
you know?
Imagine like if you had gone into a coma before the pandemic and you wake up right now, what the heck would you think?
Exactly. You would think that I'm not going to trust this new president or the president that I don't know, or that, you know, anything.
What's this thing with masks? What the hell are we all doing?
But I think one of the cool things that Sheridan did earlier on, and this plays to his strengths and to Boxleitner's strengths, is that he, like I said, he rolls up his sleeves and he takes action, right?
Definitely. He gets to work.
Yeah. He doesn't overthink it. He goes, you know, especially when they tried to revive Garibaldi, he was like, hey, you know what? I might as well do it, right?
Right. Plug me in.
Yeah, plug me in.
Because he can't let Franklin do it. I mean, what if he passes out?
I love that.
He's got to have somebody operate that device.
That's very tactically, you know, astute of Sheridan to do. And that's what he is. He's a tactical thinker. You know, he's always thinking about the 360 degrees of a situation.
Wasn't it Delenn who said, you're always strategizing your next move?
I think so, in certain terms, but that's who he was, you know?
Yeah, it was in Sleeping in Light, I think, where it's always thinking or always strategizing your next move or something like that. Even now.
Oh, we're going to have to do we'll eventually have to know.
No, I'm in the process of editing Babel for Five's Sleeping in Light episode where, yes, I ugly cry. I have no shame. I did it, and I'll put it out there on the internet for everybody to see. But gosh, it's painful. I can't even listen to the Sleeping in Light music without breaking down.
Yeah.
It takes a lot out of me.
The best of Christoph Franke, that's for sure. I love the note that you wrote here about the need to serve others. So he's the son of David Sheridan. For some odd reason, I don't know why, maybe our fans could tell us, Straczynski loves the name David because...
Oh my God, he does.
Right? Because I believe it's Jeffrey David Sinclair. That was Sinclair's middle name.
Yep.
John J. Sheridan's the son of David Sheridan, and their son's name's David. So
yes. Also, there's a waiter at Fresh Air who's named David, who serves John and Delenn on their date, their first date.
Right.
And then isn't the commander in Legends of the Rangers also a David?
Yeah, David Martell.
Yeah. Lot of Davids. David really makes a roaring comeback in the future, apparently.
You know, it's too bad that Warren Keffer's name wasn't David. He may have lived longer. David Warren Keffer or something. We have kind of like a more of an open-ended question here. Most famous quote.
Ooh, okay. For John Sheridan?
Yeah. Because he had so much more time on screen than you know, Sinclair did. So Sinclair's best lines were very limited. But you know,
we haven't done a Sheridan quote show yet, have we? Like a top 5?
I don't remember.
I know we've done Ivanova, and we said we could make a whole series of this with each of the characters. And Delenn. Okay, so we've not done Sheridan. So, okay, we could do that easily because Sheridan is incredibly quotable. I'm going to throw one of my favorites out there, though, that's trademark Sheridan. Well, actually, there's two. Dang it.
What? Up yours.
Up yours.
Yeah.
Up yours.
Up yours.
That's classic Sheridan because I almost went with Abso-Fraggin-Lutely, but that was only season 2 and a couple of times.
True enough. But that was kind of like his. It was John Newcomb Sheridan or John Up Yours Sheridan, right?
Both apply, definitely. Let's
jump into the comments again. And
let's do it.
So I'm a little jealous of what Slice of Sci-Fi said here because she said yesterday I interviewed the two she said yesterday I interviewed the two directors of Synchronic. They also did Spring and The Endless. But next quote, I have an interview with Lou Diamond Phillips that will go up tonight or tomorrow. One of my favorites. Lou Diamond Phillips is one of my favorites. La Bamba is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Nice. Good job, Summer. Also, Summer has a book out. Check that out. It's up in the comments. Support. Especially if you're an X-Files fan.
I think that my favorite quote from Sheridan has to come with, how do you defeat the system? Every time I say no.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like a universal, but that's like universally strong Straczynski writing because that's in the same type of spirit and energy of a very famous Captain America panel that he wrote, where he said Captain America basically said, when if you believe in something, you plant yourself there like a tree, and when people say move, you respond back, no, you move. And I can see Sheridan saying that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Especially in the battle against Earth, because that must have been probably one of the most difficult transitional behaviors in Sheridan, was understanding that the uniform that he's sworn to protect, duty, honor, loyalty, sacrifice, all these things that made him who he was at the time.
Yeah.
They all mean something, but they all mean something now differently because the government that he was working for has to be saved. It's betraying itself and it's betraying its people.
Exactly.
Wow. Doesn't that sound similar?
Right. I mean, Babylon 5 is more relevant than ever. And that's actually one of the big things that you just pointed out that I'm so grateful that we had John Sheridan at the time that we did, just because his big challenge was, do I stand up to my own government? Everything that has meant anything to me in my life is being challenged.
Right.
So to have him try to confront that and to basically follow his truth, his actions, however hard they might be, however insurmountable the task might seem, he had to frickin' go with it and do it.
And I think that it was the episode after Severed Dreams. It was the episode with the Nafak Cha, the rebirth ceremony. That's the time where I think that I really probably gained the most respect for him, because he took off his uniform and he's basically saying that something that meant the world to me, that's something that was everything in my life, I have to let go, I have to sacrifice, because there's no way that I'll be able to move forward if I cling on to this past.
Yes. And think about all the chaos happening in his life at that particular moment. Not only is he losing all that has meant everything to him at that point, but he's also at that point turning that corner and confessing basically his love for Delenn. This relationship that he wasn't really looking for it. He had to overcome his grief for Anna and embrace a new love with a half Minbari hybrid, which when you're Star Killer, that's kind of a thing to think about. So a lot going on for this guy, and yet he's embracing the change. He is taking it one step at a time and realizing in the midst of all this chaos, I'm still going to be okay. I've got these things that I can cling on to.
Well, I think
plus new uniforms.
Plus new uniforms, as Delenn anticipated. But I think, let's see, they brought it up here, and you guys are the best. There was, let's see, BC says, never start a fight, but always finish it.
Oh, duh. Yo, okay, maybe that is the signature quote, although that's kind of maybe David Sheridan's signature quote, but John kind of, he kind of enacted that whole mantra, right? That is seasons 3 through 4 right there.
And that is a very Straczynski-esque quote, because BC, you're right. At the very beginning of Changeling, or the Changeling, that's what Angelina Jolie's character says to her son. It's like, I don't want you to start fights, but you always finish them.
Honestly, maybe that is the JMS mantra, right?
Right.
The thing of his life, that's what's carried him through, and he's passing it into these characters that we love so much.
I also think that, in reading Becoming Superman, that's kind of, where you see that formed. You also see it a lot in Sinclair, because Sinclair wasn't one to start fights, but Sinclair was always there to finish it. And I'm not saying
That's
finish
true.
it in an action-oriented Newcomb Sheridan kind of way, right?
It's true. It's true. Yeah. Just different methodologies to navigate the situation. But you're right. He wouldn't start a fight.
Right. And he was always really good at meeting it. Like, say, for instance, when Naroon was about to, go to war over the loss of Bramner's remains, and, basically, Sinclair diffused the situation, and Naroon probably gave him the biggest compliment any Minbari could give a human, that he says, you talk like a Minbari. I loved John Vickery in that episode. They look, and then Sinclair, just to kind of smooth things over and just kind of diffuse the situation even more. I love the way he delivered the line where he's like, we fought for long enough, just
right.
It felt like the weight of the world just dropped off of his shoulders. And he's like, look, it's time for peace.
Yeah,
finally and
tired.
forever, it's time for peace. You're tired of fighting. I'm tired of fighting. Let's find a way better. Let's find a way forward.
Yes. Right? Yes.
So here's a really good point, and I'm glad that we're rediscovering these, because I haven't read these notes since we did the very first show.
Same here. I mean, I reviewed them right before the show. That was about it. But we wrote good notes.
After several rewatches, what do we think of these leaders now? Have our opinions changed from how we initially saw these characters? And that goes out to everybody.
Yeah, you kind of got my opinion already throughout the show. So, Norm, I want to ask you that question. Has your opinion changed over the years, or were you always a Sinclair fan? Because I know you love Sinclair.
Oh, when I first started watching Babylon 5, I was pretty much comparing it very, very, unfairly in a way to Star Trek, because Captain Kirk, up until that time, has always been kind of like my leader du jour when it comes to science fiction fandom, and captains and things of that nature. I mean, but I always feel like that's the kind of captain that in a way that Sinclair was, and that Sheridan was. Sheridan was kind of like the action Kirk, and Sinclair was kind of like the diplomatic Kirk. No, let's put it this way. Diplomatic Kirk was far more TOS Kirk. And action Kirk was more the movies, actually, where he's like, he shouldn't be getting into action fights.
Well, I don't know if I totally agree with that. Yes and no, because I'm thinking Star Trek 6, where the last thing that he wants to do is anything with the Klingons.
Right. But the thing is that he jumped into let them die. They're animals.
Yes. I mean, yeah, he has a great evolution through that story where he comes around. Mm-hmm. So yes and no. I don't know. I'm thinking of certain episodes Court Martial, The Menagerie, or even Space Seed.
Those are very Sinclair-esque, I think, up until a point, right? Because Court Martial, it was diplomacy, and it was more he was trying to diffuse the situation through using more intellect than his fists. Now, it's not to say that he didn't, because there were times where, and especially in season 3, and that's Fred Freiberger's take on season 3, it was less of the intellectual Kirk and more of the bare knuckle, let's turn this into a real space action.
Because that's what the network wanted. Yeah, they wanted more fist fights.
Right.
Because that's what they thought was going to bring in the numbers.
But
no.
Yeah.
If only they understood the show. Terry Lynn is here. Hello.
Hey,
welcome.
Terry Lynn.
Glad you're here. Hope you are being safe. Colorado fires, man. I've been reading up on them. We've been talking about fires a lot in Discord. Speaking of which, I ought to do a Discord link in case there are new people who come across this feed. If you want to join in the fun, we take the conversation to our Discord server when we're all done. It doesn't stop, We talk about anything and everything. We've got a Babylon 5 channel. We've got things. Hey, if you need to vent after a bad day, we've got We've got Down Below for the more risque things. If you want to talk about deep space franchises, we've got it all, baby. So we can do all of that. Here is the link. It's in the chat. Keep in mind, if you're watching this a few days from when we air, these links expire about 24 hours after they're in. So if you click that link and it doesn't work, you can hit me up on Twitter. My handle is OhTheProfanity. As you can see on screen, I'll get you a link.
I think that I really like what Terry Lynn said here about I felt like Sinclair acted more of a 1950s hero. And I'm going to bring up an example that I'm not sure if anyone out there has watched or has heard of, but Gene Roddenberry wrote for a show in the 1950s, a Western show called Have Gun Will Travel, starring Richard Boone as the main character. His name was Paladin. The man with a knight without armor in a savage land was his trademark, kind of trademark description. And he was very much like Sinclair in that episode in that show, because he always walked into a situation where he tried his best to use violence as the last resort. You know?
Yeah. And I would say that, well, really, that applies to Sheridan and Sinclair.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sheridan didn't necessarily want to fight, but if he had to, he would, and he'd win. But at the same time, Sinclair will do the same. Can I cut in with one of Summer's comments here?
Sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. Sinclair was the symbol of the station as kind of like this diplomatic mission, which I think reflected in the way that he carried himself, acted as the commander of the station. His whole demeanor was centered around that attitude. You're right, Summer.
And you know what's also interesting about more seasons 1 and 2 of Babylon 5 than anything else? What I loved how they, aside from like the troubles with the aliens and the ambassadors and everything in between, I loved that Sinclair always had to wrestle with senators.
Oh my God. I mean, how true to life, right?
Yeah.
And he knew when he had to piss them off and how he was going to get some backlash, and then to try and smooth things over as much as he could when he could. I mean, he knew that he was going to win some, lose some.
Exactly. And he did his best to... Actually, he always found a way for the people to win. That's what I loved about Sinclair. You know, he always found a way for the people to win.
Talk about top priority. That's really what he was striving for.
Especially with, I think By Any Means Necessary is probably one of the most overlooked, underappreciated episodes of Babylon 5. Maybe we should take a look at that as a focus show.
You know what? That's a very good idea. That is one of my very favorite episodes of all of season 1, just because one of the ways Sinclair tries to find the best solution for all parties involved. No, it's not a complete win, but how is that possibly going to happen? And yet he does do that out of the box thinking to try and do as much as he can to make as many people as he can happy. But at the center of it all, he cares about people and he has their best interests in mind.
Terry Lynn says, yes, but the senators are not in the chain of command. That always bothering me. I know.
That's true. That's a good point. And yet, I mean, as part of EarthGov, I guess they do have some pull.
Well, they're on the oversight committee for Babylon 5. So the funding comes from that oversight committee.
Okay, that's how it all fits in. Okay,
right. So say like Senator Hadoshi. Senator Hadoshi was probably one of the more prominent senators, Asian actor. He always popped in and always told Sinclair, like, hey, especially like in By Any Means Necessary, he was saying that Orrin Zento was a very influential negotiator on behalf of EarthGov, and he's very well connected, and you've just made an enemy of certain higher ups. And
right.
So,
exactly.
There's like, the higher ups aren't here. I got to deal with the here and the now.
Exactly.
And
I don't want the ire of my workers coming into my office and ranting to me on a daily basis.
Right. So you can tell those higher ups, whatever you need, but I need to keep these, cargo ships moving without losing people because you're not giving them enough money for equipment. That's all they really want.
Yeah. He needs people to be able to do their jobs.
I think Aki Aong, thank you, Super Dave. Earl Green says that the only weak link in By Any Means Necessary is the guy who played Orrin Zento. I agree with that up to a point, but I think they needed somebody to be so comically heavy that you had to focus your hate and your ire on this guy. Like, this guy is a total, bureaucrat.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm going to have to go back and reassess that because I don't remember much about that performance in particular.
Terrelyn says, no, that does not give them command. Consider what the Night Guard was to take command. Well, Night Guard was under the auspices of the Department of the Ministry of Peace.
Yeah.
And
well, and of course, once Clark came in, he and his cronies reorganized a lot of things.
I think, I think that there was a huge disconnect between, the senator, the oversight committee that was funding Babylon 5, and then the subversion and overtake of the government under President Clark and Night Watch. That's something that we didn't really see kind of fleshed out too much, but I think that it was always there behind the scenes, and I really do think that it'd be a lot of fun. Thumbs up in the chat if you want us to take a deep dive look at By Any Means Necessary. I think that'd be a fun show to do. Yeah,
let us know, please. If you like it, we'll put it into the idea bank and tackle it at some point. If not, it's okay. We got other topics.
Orinzento was a soul hunter. I believe he was the soul hunter that reclaimed the renegade from, Soul Hunter, the second episode, I think it was. Yeah. So, and kind of like the file and analysis, with Sheridan and Sinclair, in terms of their role as the One, who did you feel that you really identified with as being kind of like the embodiment of what Straczynski was trying to create with Valen, or with the head of the Rangers, or with kind of like this, because it's like,
Are you kidding me? I can't do that.
Yes, you can.
Okay, it's like asking what is my favorite Star Trek series. It's like if I had several children and someone would say, which one's your favorite? I'd be, they're all mine. I love them all for very different reasons for who they are. And that's kind of the conclusions I've come to with, yes, the Star Trek series. Yes, I do have some favorites, but I love them all for their own reasons. I appreciate them for what they are. I appreciate Sinclair for being that calm, stoic president, and especially when it all comes full circle and we realize that he was Valen. Whoa. Okay, come on. That is amazing. You can't top basically being a god. But Sheridan in his own right carries so much of the weight of the Babylon 5 story that it just, I'm sorry, that's impossible for me.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that, like, Valen was the prophet. He was kind of like the first prophet, like the prophet of Minbar, right? The prophet that would deliver them from the Shadow War 1,000 years ago. And Sinclair and Sheridan is kind of like, he's not necessarily in that same realm. It's just that he took kind of like this overall inclusiveness to all of these races, to becoming this interstellar alliance, to create this light going forward, right? So they both had like the very significant role to play, both as kind of like a mortal and in some cases immortal, because their words and deeds carry them far beyond their physical presence, either on the station or later on Minbar. What Valen did to cement the philosophy of the Minbari culture lasted for 1,000 years and more, and then Sheridan did the same thing with the creation of the Interstellar Alliance, as we saw in the deconstruction of Falling Stars, how that continued like 1,000 years from then.
Exactly. And you could even say Delenn had her major part in that whole thing too, thus making the three. And just, I mean, everybody contributes in a major way to that circle.
So we have a lot of thumbs up for doing the By All Means Necessary show. Okay.
Well, I'm down.
So let's see here. Let's get into a couple comments here before we have to close out the show.
We're almost to the end. Man, this goes so fast. I forget.
I know. That's crazy, huh? So I'm glad that we were able to clear up a couple things here for Super Dave with the actor who played the Soul Hunter and Orinzento. Let's see. Mountains of Elysium says, I think Sinclair's character gained a lot more power after Sheridan's arrival. They both added to each other's character they would not have had individually. Oh, yeah.
That's a very good point to make. I think you're right. I think that helps us appreciate them both for their different ways.
It almost breaks my heart in a way that Garibaldi did not see in real time. He did not see Sinclair during War Without End Part 1 and 2. He saw him in the reference to Babylon Squared, obviously, right? But I really would have liked.
Yeah,
It was
watch your
such
back.
yeah. He goes, "Watch your back, Michael."
Yeah, and nevertheless, honestly, if those two had spoken one more time, it might have broken them both.
It may have disrupted time. I don't think they were ever supposed
we
to
can't have
meet.
that. Which is probably why it didn't happen at all. I have a feeling that Sinclair knew that, and so as much as he wanted to, nope, can't do it.
Well, he saw them fly into like Sector 14, and he's like, "I know that's that's me and Michael on that ship. They're talking about fastened and zip." Zip and
Yes.
fasten, you know.
Yes, somebody mentioned earlier in the comments, Sheridan never got the fasten zip question, so that was a point in the favor of Sinclair.
Yeah, they never just had that relationship. They had a good working relationship, but they never had that relationship that Sinclair and Garibaldi had.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the closest thing might be with Delenn, Sheridan and Delenn, where they're doing like you sound like a motorboat.
Motorbutt?
Motorbutt? Butt? Yeah. Also, when she says abso-fragging-lutely, damn it, she says, I've observed your language a little more. Kid, do you approve?
Abso-fragging-lutely, damn it. All right, well, here we are.
Stuff.
We are at
It's
the end
an
of our
hour.
show.
Man, okay, well, do you want to do By Any Means Necessary next week, or should we hold off on that? Like, do you have an inkling? Should we preview?
I actually think that that's great because I don't want to do like every previous episode that we did. The Sector 14 files are just every once in a while we're going to take a time jump to Sector 14 and see what we did in the past. But I think that especially now, I think that By Any Means Necessary is a really good topic for discussion, especially when it comes to kind of like the state of the Workers' Party in the future.
I'm down. Okay, well, let's do that next week. And yeah, the Sector 14 files, as you're calling them, that's very good. They're still going to be around. But boy, we did cover some really great early topics at the start of this show that you guys, you have no idea. Yeah. So we will have to sift through those and eventually put them back out. But I'm down to do a deep dive. Totally.
Yeah, that'll be so much fun getting back into the old content and kind of like seeing where we are 2 years later, because we've talked about it a lot. We've had our rewatches. You've completed your Babel for 5 journey.
Yes, I have. Yeah, my husband's officially watched all of Babylon 5 now, and we'll have to decide. He hasn't watched any of the movies, or he hasn't even watched The Gathering yet. We have to decide, like, okay, do we do that or don't we? Or does he want to leave it just like here, kind of keep it in its most pure state, Well,
I think if he's a Sinclair fan, I think that it would be fair for him to see The Gathering at least, just to see where he started.
Maybe. But it's got to be up to him. I'm leaving it entirely up to him. It's his journey. I'm just going along for the ride.
I feel you. I get that. Yeah. But I would encourage it for sure.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, this was a lot of fun. I'm so glad we got to do a show today. I'm so glad we had this topic. It's so rich. I mean, we could go another hour easily, but we've covered the big points.
Mm-hmm. And then we can take it to...
good comments.
Yeah, and then we can take it to the Discord. And for people who would like to continue talking about this topic, and let us know on Discord if you think that we have any other topics that you'd like to talk about.
This always taking suggestions.
Yeah, this is as much of your community as it is ours, and we'd love to hear from you. So
yeah, well, and you're all great. So we have good company. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and we really enjoy your chat and your inactivity. It's been fantastic. We can't. It's easier to not speak into a vacuum with our own thoughts, right?
It's true. And in those earlier episodes when nobody knew who we were, that's kind of what we were doing, and just hoping somebody out there would be watching. And now we've got this nice core group of people, plus a bunch of other folks who, eventually fold in, and we can't thank you enough for what you all do because you keep us going.
Absolutely. So looking forward to next week's topic, and we'll get that out there on social media so that everyone can put that on their calendar. And thanks for watching us. For all of you who are here, and for all of you who will be watching this later, we appreciate your support. And make sure that you follow us on social media. That's at Zocalo Livecast. You can follow me at Lounge Lizard, LAONGE Lizard, and you can follow Shar at
the Profanity.
On Twitter exclusively, I believe.
Exclusively. Yes, I am exclusive to the Twitter. It's the last social network I'm on. And if any indications, Norm, you were telling me about this social
Dilemma.
the social dilemma documentary on Netflix. After I watched that, I have no idea if I'll ever be on social media again. So
Yeah,
who knows? We'll find out. We'll
somewhere
find out
along
if I
the
can
line-
stomach it.
somewhere along the line, we'll have to find like our last best hope for social media.
Is there
Yeah.
hope for social media?
I
I don't
don't
know.
know.
I'm just grateful for our community here in the Zocalo because I know we're not going to have problems with that. So
We'll
thank
draw.
goodness.
If you watch that, draw your own conclusions, and we'll talk about that maybe on Discord. That would be fun.
There we go. We can do that. Cool.
All
Okay,
right,
guys.
folks. Next time, same bad time, same bad channel. So we will be seeing you.
I'm not going to go out with Fear's Wave today. I'm going to say never start a fight, but always finish it.